بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Last time we were discussing the Sifat and we left off talking about Shidda, Rakhawa and Bayniyya, and I told you guys that you have to memorize the acronyms for them. So who learned the acronyms for these different Sifats? Anyone learn the acronyms? So that's the acronym for which one? Sakata fahathahu shakhsun. Opposite of jahar. Hams. So hams is sakata fahathahu shakhsun. Jahar is everything else. Or you can say fahathahu shakhsun sakat. Then we discussed shidda, rakhawa, and bayniyya. So who can tell me the acronym for shidda? Ajidu qatin bakat. Here they don't have a shadda on the ta, so ajidu qatin bakat. And does anyone remember the acronym for bayniyya? Lin Umar. And then the rest are going to be ikhwa. We left off practicing in Surah Al-Inshirah. That is a good surah to practice this, where the shidda, rakhawa, and the bayniyya is apparent when the letter is sakin. So we can do that again, inshallah. If we write out the entire Surah Al-Inshirah, there's 8 verses. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك. Okay, so that's 4 verses. We can suffice with these 4, inshallah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the thing that we mentioned before the end of last class is that every letter that has a haraka, you give it the same amount of time. You read each haraka with the same duration of time. So if you have fataha, fataha, neither letter is going to have a longer duration of pronunciation than the other. And that's how it is when they have a haraka, irrespective of the haraka. Ya'idukum or khalaqakum. All of these have haraka. Kutiba, ya'idukum, su'ilat. They all have a similar duration of time. That rule does not apply when there is a sakin. So when there is a sakin, you have 3 levels of duration wherein you should hold that sakin letter. And we mentioned that these 3 levels are based off of shidda, rakhawa, and bayniyya. So shidda will be held the least, bayniyya will be held the second least, and rakhawa will be held the most. So to display that, we have to first find the sakin letters. We're not looking at the harakas, looking at the sakins, and then I'll underline them with the necessary colors. So for shidda, I will make that black. For bayniyya, we'll make that green. And for rakhawa, we'll make that red. So now the first sakin letter is a meme. What is meme? Is it shidda, rakhawa, or bayniyya? Bayniyya. So bayniyya is going to be green. Then we have sheen. Where does sheen fall? Rakhawa. Right? Because it's not ajidu qatin bakat and it's not lin umar. So it's rakhawa. Ha. Rakhawa as well. Then we have dal here. Okay, why is it shidda? Ajidu, qatin bakat, so ajidu. And then kaf, shidda, ajidu qatin bakat. Okay. Ain, bayniya. That's on blad. Ain here. وضعنا عنك noon bayniya. Although here, because you do ikhfa, you won't really do that. But za rakhawa. Why? Yeah, not ajidu qatin bakat and not lin umar. And kaf, shidda ajidu qatin bakat, kaf. الذي أنقض. Noon again is not going to be, here you're going to be doing ikhfa, so it's not going to count, but it is technically part of lin umar, bayniya. Ha, rakhawa, because not ajidu qatin bakat and not lin umar, thus it is read. Kaf, kaf is which one? Shidda. Ajidu qatin bakat, kaf. ورفعنا عين بينية, that is going to be green, green. ذكر kaf, shidda, and kaf again, shidda. So the red we can write here is going to be rakhawa, rakhawa. Then we have green is bayniya, and black is shidda. So you will hold rakhawa a little bit longer, bayniya a little bit less, and shidda is the absolute least. So maybe I could even draw like the amount of time like this. Supposed to be red. Then bayniya like that. And then shidda very less, very much less. Okay. So now that's how, as kind of a diagram, you would hold them. So when you recite alam nashrah, so sh is longer than alam nashrah laka sadrak. So the dal and the kaf, you don't hold them much at all. The dal has a qalqala, kaf has a k. That's about it. وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ. The noon doesn't count, as I mentioned, because there's ikhfa. Most of the time there's going to be some ahkam of noon, so here it technically won't count. Ikhfa, you're going to hold it a little bit longer anyway. وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ. So wizrak, z is longer than ضَعْ. وَوَضَعْنَا ضَعْنَا. You don't want to hold the ayn too long. You don't want to be like وَوَضَعْنَا. But for wizrak, you do hold it a little bit longer. Wizrak. الذي أنقض ظهرك. ظهرك. That duration is much longer than this duration. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. So that is a practical usage of the sifat. So you should keep that in mind. It's not too big, but you should understand, and when you listen to a reciter, you'll be able to tell that they do pause a little bit on certain letters when they're sakin, and this is why. So we're done with this grouping. This was the second grouping of sifat. I'm going to erase this now, inshallah. Does anyone remember the Sifat Mutadadda? We had the Sifat and then Mutadadda, غير متضادة. Then how many did we have under Mutadadda? Sorry? 4 pairs. 4 pairs. First pair is going to be al-hams and jahr. That we completed. The second one is going to be al-shidda, not really a pair, al-rakhawa, and al-bayniyah. And the third one is going to be al-isti'la and al-itbaq. Oh, I'm sorry, al-isti'la and al-infitah. No, al-istifal, istifal. You're right. And then it's al-itbaq and al-infitah. Okay. So these are all the ones that have opposites. So now we're going to do this one, al-isti'la and al-istifal. Does anyone remember the acronym for al-isti'la? So that is the acronym for al-isti'la. So let's write that here. Al-isti'la, the acronym for that, خص ضغط خفض خص ضغط خفض. Okay. So again, add that to the acronyms that you have to memorize. If you don't memorize the acronyms, you won't really be able to benefit from the sifat. So some I would say are more important than others. Hams and jahar, they are used to a degree, but because everyone uses them in their pronunciation, it's not too necessary. Many people make a mistake in the isti'la, so I would say this is very important to memorize. And actually, there's not really much picking and choosing. There's only 4 acronyms, or 5 because of Bayniyah and Shidda. 5 acronyms. Very easy, inshallah. So now, what is al-isti'la? Isti'la is essentially the raising of the back end of the tongue, the thickening of the tongue. And istifal is the lack of that. I'm going to read to you what Sheikh Ayman has in the kitab. Isti'la, he says, the sound rises to the roof of the mouth when pronouncing them. So if we were to draw a mouth, again, you have Zaid, okay, and hard to draw the mouth. Here's Zaid's tongue. Okay. As you can see in the center of his mouth, there's a type of cave at the top of his mouth. Right, this thing. That is like, that's how in your mouth, in the center on the palate, it kind of goes upward. It's not completely flat. The palate, if you drag your tongue on your palate, you'll notice after the ridges in the beginning, there's like ridges here. After that, it kind of goes up. It's hollow, like a cave or a dome shape. What happens in al-isti'la is you change the shape of the tongue. You make the tongue flat here and big at the back. This is what happens to the tongue. This is the tongue. Turn it red. It is thickened in the back. Okay. And there should be a little passageway so the sound can get through. It looks like it's blocking completely. It shouldn't be blocking. There. What happens is, now I'll draw another image here so that you can see what happens in istifal. He has kind of an underbite. Okay. So for here, he has it like this. I'm going to draw it, try my best to draw it the way he has it. Okay. So in al-isti'la, the voice is coming through the throat. And because of the shape of the tongue, the sound is hitting the dome of your mouth. When the sound hits the dome of the mouth, it bounces off the top and comes down as well. That bouncing and filling the mouth with the sound is what we call full mouth. As for istifal, the sound comes directly out. It doesn't bounce off too much. He actually has in the diagram, the tongue is raised up in the back, so the sound hits the top and then it doesn't hit the dome of the mouth. It just comes out. So for instance, if you have kha, 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 or sa, la, what is happening is the back end of your tongue is thickening and it allows the center of your mouth to be hollow. The sound comes and hits the center of the mouth. And because it's like a cave-like shape, the sound fills in the entire mouth. So if you say sa versus sa, 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 the tongue is not really becoming thick in the back. The cave is not made. There's no cave formed in the mouth. And so the sound just comes clearly out. Sa. Or instead of la, you say da, da. Da versus la, all. The tongue is, let's see, I don't know if I could draw it like front view. This is like the front of the tongue, and then there's like a dip here, and the back of the tongue is higher, right? So there's the center of the tongue kind of is like that, right? The sound is coming. What is this thing called? The boxing bag? Uvula, right? So the sound is coming, and this part is really thick. So the sound comes this way, and then hits downward, like coming up like that, then down like that. Whereas in istifal, it's completely flat, so it just comes straight out. I don't know if that image helped. You know, it looks like a red blood cell. All right, so that is what isti'la is. Istifal is just normal. Isti'la is the thickening. So we call letters of the isti'la, when you're reading them with isti'la, it's called tafkhim. It's called tafkhim. The quality is called isti'la, but to read with isti'la is called tafkhim. At-tafkhim. That's what you translate to in English as full mouth. Isti'la's translation is not full mouth. At-tafkhim is. And does anyone know when you read with istifal what that is called? What is empty mouth called in English? At-tarqiq. At-tarqiq. Okay. So you'll say that a person is doing tafkhim or they're doing tarqiq. What is tafkhim? it is the thickness of the tongue. Or rather, it's not the thickness of the tongue, it's the thickness of the sound that is caused by the thickness of the tongue. So isti'la is the thickness of the tongue. Istifal is the flatness of the tongue. Tafkhim is the sound which results from the thickness of the tongue. And tarqiq is the sound which results from the flatness of the tongue. So the quality is called isti'la, the sound is called tafkhim, the quality is called istifal, the sound is called tarqiq. So this in English is, some people translate it as full mouth versus empty mouth. So now, examples. Are you guys still writing this? Should I erase it? Anyone still writing? Yes, okay. Let's do some examples of ha. So for instance, you have, khalidina. Then you have khair. Then you have, what is with the dhamma? Can't think of a word. Yeah, khusran. And then with the kasra, anyone know any word with the kasra? Khitamuhu misk? Khitamuhu. Okay. So now, kha. Khalidina. Kha. Kha. So it's not kha. Kha is, you're using the makhraj right, but the sifa and attribute of isti'la is not there. So what did we say when someone reads with the proper makhraj but not with the proper sifat? What type of error would that be? If someone recites with the proper makhraj but not with the proper sifat, what type of mistake is that? The sisters already mentioned. Lahan khafi. Lahan khafi. What's the ruling of lahan khafi? Yeah, it's a minor sin. Minor sin. Khalidina, khair, khusran, khitamuhu. Okay, so you need to read it properly to avoid minor mistakes. Now, if your makhraj is completely wrong, like kalidina, kair, kusran, kitamuhu, you make it a kaf, that's a major sin. Okay, and that applies for all of them. Kha, sa, ba, gha, ta, qa, va, khu, su, du, gu, tu, ku, vu, khi, si, di, ghi, ti, We'll talk about now, there are different levels of tafkhim, meaning full mouth. There's different levels. If you guys really like the charts, I suggest you purchase the book. It's available. They have QR codes too you can scan, and you can hear the recitation on every page. All right, so now we've talked about tafkhim. You guys need to memorize the acronym. I'm going to put the acronym back up here. Al-isti'la / at-tafkhim, talking about full mouth, and the acronym is khussa ضغط قِض. Okay, these are very important. Khussa ضغط قِض. Now we're going to talk about levels of tafkhim. There's two views in this regard, but I'm going to skip mentioning both, and I'll just mention the one that is more intricate, inshallah, because that is better. This view, which is the view of Imam Ibn al-Jazari, is that there are 5 levels to tafkhim. 5 levels to tafkhim. The strongest level of tafkhim is going to be one of these letters with a fatha and then a alif after it. This line just tells you if it's a fatha or a kasra. So it's fatha with a alif after it. Examples: khalidina, kha. So you got one letter from the isti'la. It has a fatha. After the fatha has a alif. This is the highest level of tafkhim. Another example, this is very common in the Quran. Qala, qala, almost every page. Qala, qala, qala. Level 2, just a fatha. That line, as I mentioned before, is to differentiate, because if I just have it like this, you could kind of gauge because it's higher, but you don't know if it's a fatha or a kasra. You put this line here, now I know it's above. Okay. So this is the second level of tafkhim, second highest, just a fatha. قد أفلح قد قد. Third level of isti'la, one of these letters with the dhamma. I should say third letter of tafkhim. يقول يقول. Fourth letter or fourth level of tafkhim is sakin. Sakin. يقطعون. يقطعون. سقناه. سقناه. شقوتنا. شقوتنا. Okay. Number 4, and lastly, number 5. Who can guess? Kasra. Kasra. That's the least level. Qila. Qila. Now I will just erase Khalidina because all these examples are with qaf. Alright. So these are the 5 levels of tafkhim. This means that not every time you see one of the khusadat al-qilf, you give it the same level of tafkhim. There are different levels of it. The most important is this one. This is the most apparent, because it seems like no tafkhim at all, but it's still considered tafkhim. Now, why is this the strongest? Qa, when it has a fatha, it makes it very apparent. Kha, sa, ba, gha, ta, qa, wa. Makes it very apparent. The sound is very apparent when there's a fatha. And when there's a alif after the fatha, it magnifies the sound. It magnifies it further. So qa is already like qa, qad, qad. But that is stretched out when there is a alif after it. Qala, qala, qala. That requires practice, because some people, they do a little bit of tafkhim, but it's not a lot. So they'll do like Qala, 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 qa, qa. There is still a ah, but you could do more than that. You can make your tongue even thicker. Saying qala, qala, qa, qa. You have to avoid, however, turning it into a dhamma. You don't want to do a qula, qula. If you do qula, that sounds like Arabic Coca-Cola and supposed to be boycotting. Qula, qala, qala, qa, qa, qa. Let the sound fill your mouth. Qa, qa. And you can tell your lips should not be forming a wow sound. If your lips form a wow sound, that means you're turning into a dhamma. If you're saying qula, qu, qu, that's a dhamma. It's like a mix between dhamma and fatha. The lips should say the same. Qa, 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 qa. People hear us, they'll think we're practicing being crows. Qa, qa, right? So in English, you'd write it like this. Qa, qa. Second is just a fatha, no alif after that. So it has the clarity, but no pull to it. So that is a high level of tafkhim. Qad, 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 qad. Yeah, just a fatha. Third is going to be dhamma. There's still a very thick sound with the dhamma. However, it doesn't have the clarity of a fatha. Yaqu, yaqu. And reminder, whenever we read with a dhamma, we purse the lips to create more of a u sound. Yaqulu, yaqulu, yaqu. Number 4 is going to be sakin. Yaqo, yaqo, qo, 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 yaqo. Suqa, 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 suqanahu. Shiqa, shiqawatuna, shiqa, shiqa, qa, qa, shiqa. Now the qalqala, it is not affected by the previous haraka. So you won't say, okay, there's a kasra is like a weak, very empty mouth. That will not affect the qalqala of the qaf. Shiqa, shiqa, shiqa. And then the weakest is going to be kasra. Kasra in general is a very flat and weak sound in terms of tafkhim. Kasra is the leader when it comes to tarqiq, but it is, all the way at the end when it comes to tafkhim. Qila, qila. So it sounds like zero tafkhim. Like you retain the makhraj and you avoid adding a level of tafkhim. That's how you do with the kasras, right? But it has an innate nature of tafkhim, so we don't say that it doesn't have tafkhim. It's just the weakest level of tafkhim. Okay, so qila, qila, qila. Qila is more than kila with a kaf, kila. So that is the level of tafkhim that's innate in the letter, but there's no attempt to make it more. You can come to it. Thank you. Okay. There's no attempt to make it more. So just pronounce the letter and don't try to add tafkhim to it. Here you're trying your best to add a lot of tafkhim. Qa, qala, qad, yaqu, yaqo, yaqo. And here, qila. Try not to add the tafkhim, but pronounce it correctly from its makhraj, and then you'll be able to do the kasra there. So those are 5 levels of tafkhim. Now, you guys got this? Let me erase this, inshallah. And I'll share one more thing, and then we'll break for tonight. Arabic letters are going to be broken down into, like we mentioned, musta'aliya and mustafila. However, musta'aliya are the ones that are full mouth. Mustafila are the ones that are empty mouth. So what are the letters of musta'aliya? خص ضغط قض. Like we just mentioned. These have a natural isti'la, tafkhim all the time. Whether it's fatha, dhamma, sakin, or kasra, always tafkhim. Tafkhim always. Okay? No matter what. Yes, we say kasra, you can barely hear it, but it's still there. Mustafila is broken into two categories. Okay? Always mustafila. This is empty mouth. I can say always tarqiq. You guys have to learn these terms, inshallah. There's a lot of terminology happening here. If you take notes, it's good. If you want to listen to it again, that's why we're recording it. And then there are some that are sometimes muraqqaq, sometimes mufakham. That's what it's called. Like muraqqaq, mufakham means the same thing. I'll just leave it as tarqiq and tafkhim. Okay. So you got these permanently full mouth. Then you got the ones that are most of the times or always empty mouth. But then you have a hybrid. Anyone know what these are? Sometimes empty mouth, sometimes full mouth. Ra is one of them. Lam is one of them. There's one more. Anyone know the third one? Third one. There's one more. Lam, ta, not ta. Alif. So these, depending on their situation, they will be empty mouth, or if they're next to a particular letter they'll be full mouth. So when you say raji'un, ra, that is tafkhim. But ra is not part of this because ra sometimes is tarqiq. And Allah, Allah, that is a lot of tafkhim. They actually give it a different name for lam. It's called taghlid. But anyway, it's not always like that, because when you say lillahi, that's empty mouth. And alif, when you say like khalidina, you are pronouncing the alif after that. That's alif. Kha, that stretches. Alif, not a kha. So that alif is full mouth. Qala, the alif is full mouth. So we are going to pause here, inshallah, and next time we're going to start talking about these that are sometimes muraqqaq, sometimes mufakham. You guys really need to memorize this acronym as well as previous acronyms. فحثه شخص سكت, أجد قط بكت, and then لن عمر, and then خص ضغط قض. Because as we move on, there's more and more acronyms, inshallah. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.